We have our next presenter coming up, and his name is Clay Rehling. He's a digital artist and game maker who has been using Unity and Photoshop for several years. And I actually have gotten to meet and get to know Clay a little bit, and he's really a great person and quite knowledgeable about how to get Unity certifications, which is what his talk is going to be about. He's going to tell you a little bit about how to get a Unity certification in this day and age, and a little bit about the sort of tools and stuff that will help you be able to learn that faster.
Okay, so I'm Clay Rehling. I am a digital artist, and I've been using Photoshop for years and Unity. And I just recently got my Unity certification, and I want to share with you what that is and how you could do it if you were interested. And first, I'm going to tell you just a little bit about myself. I have, let's see, there we go. I have two computers going, so I apologize that it's going kind of, I'm off to a rough start. Give me one more second. I have two computers and I keep reaching for the other mouse on the other computer, which, believe it or not, is not working for me. There we go. So I'm Clay Rehling. I had to pick a name, a title for myself when I was at GDC, and I don't have a company, so I just said I'm Clay Rehling, Boy Genius, and I put that on my badge at the conference, and you wouldn't believe how many people came up to talk to me just to ask, hey, are you a Boy Genius? What is that all about? So I thought that was a good way to start a conversation. So this is my webpage for my artwork. This is at clayrehling.com. And my email is clayrehling@hotmail.com. And this is the Unity Certified Associate. And when I got this, I get the permission to use the Unity logo on my LinkedIn page. So I've got the Unity badge, says Certified Associate Game Developer. And I was pretty proud of that. I'm pretty stoked that I got that accomplished. And as of right now, I'm moving on to the next level of Unity certification, which is slightly more advanced programming. And but today I'm going to talk about this, which is a user level, entry level certificate. And it proves basically that you've learned a little bit about the whole Unity interface. You can do a little of everything, and you're going to learn about particle effects and animation and artwork and sound and physics. And so what I would say is, if you're interested in learning a lot about Unity over a broad view of all the systems it does, this was a great way for me to learn that. As part of the test, we had to learn all the menus and what they all do and all the components and what they do. You didn't have to drill down very far into all of the details, but you needed a broad understanding. So let me tell you just a little bit about myself. First, I've been making games since 1982, when my father and I made one of the first games for the IBM PC. This is my dad right here. He was a programmer, and he taught me how to program, and I taught him how to make video games. And we were proud that our game had color and graphics. This is me playing Dungeons and Dragons, you know, at an impressionable age. You want to learn how to make games and make maps and make characters. And this was our first game. This is called Cosmic Nightmare. And we were proud at the time to say our game had color graphics, sound, animation, joystick action, and a high scoreboard. I suppose that was when I learned that combining those elements made a game come to life. As I thought about why you might be interested in the Unity certifications, I thought back to that first experience making games. By adding lots of multimedia and action, our game stood out. The certification I'm going to talk about covers the same elements that make a game fun and stand out from the rest. So here's part of my sales pitch to you. Would you want to add some sparkle to your game? How about a volcano made from particle effects? Maybe you want sound that changes and reverberates as you move through a tunnel or a cave. How about great lighting? Lighting sets the mood and gives your scenes a lot of depth. This is my team at Game Jam. This is from Tulsa University, the Global Game Jam. I think it's 2017, which is a while ago. At the opening ceremony of the event, we ended up with, you'll see we have, my team was composed of 3 programmers, 1 musician, 3 artists, including me, 1 program manager, that was Daniel, and 1 play tester. And Daniel had a very important job. I don't know if he's still listening or if he's gone off to get some coffee after his lecture. His job as the manager was very important. He came around and made sure we were keeping on schedule and finishing our game. And he would come by and say things like, okay, is this part of the core part of your program, or is this on your wish list? And we would say, oh, it's on the wish list. He would say, get back to the core of it. When we were at the opening ceremony of the event, the host asked us, okay, where are my programmers? Okay, you guys meet over there. Okay, where are my artists? You guys go over that way. And where are my musicians? You guys meet over there. And I gravitated towards the artists. And when it was time to form a team, we had this group. And there was no doubt that having all these different skills made a stellar team. All of these elements, coding, art, music, they're all available in Unity. So are you sensing a trend? You want as much razzle dazzle in your program as you can get, because that's what makes it fun. And so I would consult the team and ask them what they wanted in terms of art. But since they were busy with the coding, I got to make a lot of the artistic decisions. I asked at one point, what was next on our hit list? They said, well, we need a game element that's called a combiner. And I said, okay, well, what do you want the combiner to look like? And they said, you can make it whatever you want. You're the lead artist. And so as soon as they called me the lead artist, I said, okay, well, that's pretty nice. I appreciated that. And so we collaborated, and the system we used is called Unity Collaborate. So we made a set of folders that held the artwork. And when I made a revision to the art, I would drop it in the shared folders, and the next build of the game automatically had my updated work. So that's what the collaborating tools in Unity can do for you. Our programmers, our artists, our musicians would upload the parts that they were working on, and the programmers would see, okay, it's all coming together. We've got some music, we've got some art, and they would put it where it belongs. And the coders were using Unity Collaborate to a much more intense degree. So they were sharing source code with each other and even editing each other's work while they typed, which I don't recommend. I frequently heard somebody say, hey, what you did broke what I did. And so you have to learn a little bit about collaborating. But Unity makes it easy because in one interface, it's got a little of everything. So let me show you, this is what our game looked like. And I drew the artwork and the programmers did the programming, and it was a laser game. It was a puzzle solving game. And so on the left, you've got a little laser, and he's shooting straight out into a prism. The prism splits the laser. And then down on the bottom, there's a lens that changes its color into purple. And you see there's a red and blue target. Those are the big circles. So the object of the game was to use mirrors and prisms and lenses to bend that laser beam to hit the targets. And when we added the music and the sound effects gave you this, the music, the ambient music gave you a really nice, thoughtful kind of sound that got you in that puzzle solving mode where you're thinking carefully and slowly, where do I position these elements? And how's that going to affect what I do next? And what sequence do these go in? So it's kind of concentrating music. And then there were sound effects. So each one of those lasers made a sound when it hit an object, and it would give you little clues, little auditory clues of what was happening. Like when your laser hit an object, you get a boom, 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 to tell you would hit something, which was pretty handy. And so that sound created a mood, and the sound effects gave you feedback to tell you, how am I doing in the game? Am I hitting anything? Is that laser touching anything? And combining all of these elements made for a really special game. Here's the more recent game that we worked on at Game Jam. It's got to be 2019 because we didn't do it 2020. And this is some artwork. We had a game where you are trying to clean up the house and you're frantic because Mom is coming home and the house is a wreck, and the children are running from room to room, and they're dropping toys as fast as you can pick them up while you're trying to clean the house. And so this was a lot of fun. You can see here we've got several levels of the artwork. This is some sketches there on the top, and there's some, some work in progress. They're getting the levels made up. And so this is what you see when you're programming in Unity. Here's a scene that shows your graphics. Over on the left, you've got some folders that have your work. And over on the right, you have the inspector, which you can think of as where you keep all your settings. But right in the middle is where all the visual stuff happens. And so you have places to put all of your work so you can see it all at once. You can open up every window under the sun, or you can bring up just the graphics or just the music. So what I'm going to talk about is the Unity certification, and I'm going to try to share my screen, and that looks like it worked. So this is from the Unity certification outlines, and let me scroll up a bit. So this is from the Unity website, and this was the course I took, Unity Certified Associate. And they've changed the name subtly a little bit. So what you can do is go to unity.com and for certifications, and I'm going to show you that in a minute. So when you look at your certification, they now have it broken out into different sections. So there's different concentrations. I'm going to be working next on the more difficult programmer, but there's also art and animation and a few other things. I'll show you that in a minute. So what's included, they've given you a long document showing you the learning outcomes. And they're going to show you, here's what you need to do to pass the test. They're really pretty straightforward. And what I discovered while I was doing my studying was that all of the questions that they asked in my study materials were very similar to what was on the real test. So this was just a perfect way to study for the test. And I'm going to go down to your part 2, exploring the Unity interface. This is the crazy complicated looking windows. The user interface is everything that you see. It includes all the panels, all the buttons, all the screens, all the menus. And once you understand what goes where, you'll get a little sense of what it can do, because everything has kind of a logical arrangement once you've gotten a handle on it. But it is exactly like every modern program that has too many menus and too many choices and options. And so it can be confusing. But this is the perfect place to start, exploring the Unity interface. And so they ask you, can you distinguish the hierarchy window? Can you find the Unity editors and the views, the scene files, and can you navigate around? Can you figure out how to bring up the panels you're looking at? And so game objects and assets are what you build a game out of. A game object can be anything. It can be a cube, it can be a sphere, it can be a spaceship, it can be your background, it can be your volcano. Assets are kind of similar. Assets tend to include artwork and sound and effects, and it's kind of you can also call it content, which is kind of a general way of saying all of the creative bits and pieces that you've brought to your game. And so once you've got all that kind of stuff, you'd move on to managing projects and assets. So you want to organize all of those things. You want your textures to be in their own folder, materials in their own folder, and so on. And so when you're assembling your game level, this is chapter 6, you want to put together your game and make sure everything works together. And when you hit run, you want to see it all come together, and you want everything in there the way you want it to be in your finished game. So you can test it over and over and see, okay, what happens if I add something or subtract something? And when you're assembling the game level, you can see, okay, how big is the game I'm trying to make? Let me see all of it at once. Let me make 10 levels to my game, and you can make 10 levels. And you can make it as big or as small as you want. And when you're looking at Unity, you can look at it in the scene mode, and you can look at it in the programming mode, and any other way you want to see how your game is functioning while it's running. So I know that's a little abstract. I'm going to give you lots and lots of slides to show you what I'm talking about. Right now, we're just running through what are they looking for in this exam. Right here, number 7 is my favorite, lighting. So lighting is really important for your games because you want to create a mood. You want to make people feel that they're in the game. And lighting and sound are the two biggest things, in my opinion, that put the player there in the game world that you're creating. So lighting includes shadows and reflections and textures that might be glowing or pulsing, all kinds of neat special effects. And they really, I'm going to talk about the Unity courses. They really went through all of the details you need to make all those different kinds of lights. And again, we're working through one of everything. You're going to make one skylight. You're going to make one spotlight. You're going to make one area light. And you're going to make one glowing texture. And you're going to make one fancy material that renders and looks kind of 3D because it's got some special effects on it. And by the time you're done, it does help to know some Unity at first. I'm not going to lie and say you could start from zero and learn all of this stuff, but they do give you the step-by-step instructions to build what they're talking about. And I think that's why it makes a good place to start if you're hoping to find out what are all the things Unity can do and what's it capable of. The next section is called baking lighting. And what that means is how your game looks when it's finally rendered and it's on the machine that you're trying to run on. Maybe it's running on a console or it's running on your mobile phone. You want to see if I have to compress everything so that it fits on a mobile phone or some different architecture, how much of my graphics are really going to come through? Well, you can bake the lighting, which means kind of finalize the lighting and the look of your game and see on different platforms, okay, do I have the right resolution? Is it clear enough? Is it sharp enough? Are my colors really popping the way I want to? The next one is animating game objects. And you can have simple animations like a sprite, and a sprite can have, maybe it'll have 16 or 32 or even just 4 different pictures that cycle to make an animation. You can make a really simple animation where your guy is running, he's jumping, he's standing still. And that might be just a few frames of animation. Or you can go all the way up to a big fancy 3D rendered cinematic look. And it can handle everything in between. And what you learn how to do is transition from one animation to the other. So if your guy is running and you hit the jump button, well, you're going to transition to the jump animation. And there's some logic behind that. And there are different editors that let you look at animation in different ways. And part 10 here is bringing animations into the game. So if you're bringing in animations from another program, like you use Blender or Cinema 4D or 3ds Max, and you've made some cool spaceships, or you've made some cool, you've made a gargoyle and you've animated him and you've got lots of backdrops that do fancy stuff. You want to bring that into your game and you want to connect it to the other parts of your game. You can do the same thing where you have different states of your animation. Like if your gargoyle shows up in the scene, you can say, play the gargoyle animation. And so you understand animator controllers. And animator controllers do just what you might think they do, that handle the animation and transition from one thing to the next. I'm going to keep going pretty quick. So implementation, navigation, and pathfinding. Pathfinding is pretty cool because it's basically an AI for your game, for your players in the game. You can tell it, what parts of the game am I allowed to go on? What parts can I walk on and what are obstacles? And then you tell it, what's my goal? Am I trying to cross this level? Okay. And then you tell your game guy, go and navigate and find a path from here to there. And it'll find its own path. And you don't have to do the programming that figures out where to send the guy to. Particle systems are pretty cool. I'm going to mention those in the slides. Let's see if I got time for slides. It's already 12:50. Let me go ahead and work on some slides. Let me just show you what I'm talking about. So when we've got, let me see here. So here are some of the courses. When I did the Unity courses, this is what they looked like. They would have some questions at the end of the sections. And my study habit was to take a screenshot like this. You can see this is their text, efficiently pack the charts. And look at what I've written down underneath. I have no idea whatsoever what they're getting at. In this lecture, I just couldn't figure it out. But I took a screenshot of all the keywords I was trying to learn. And I made a note to myself, like, you might want to come back to this because it looks like you didn't quite get it. And here's what a chapter quiz looks like. And so this looks like it's from the animator controller. And this represents the answers to 10 questions. And it looks like I got them all right. And it'll show you which ones did you miss, which ones did you achieve. And so you can go back and say, well, that one here that I have no idea whatsoever they're getting at. Well, obviously I want to go back and look at that. And I can see, well, it's talking about something like UV max distance. And I'll go back and I'll say, okay, I don't know what UV max distance means. Let's go learn. Here's an example of some code. And I don't know if anybody out there reads code or can't read code. I'm not going to lie and say it's easy, but once you start, you'll realize part of it is really learning the vocabulary. It's like taking a French class, and you need to learn some vocabulary before you can start talking about it. This is some lighting. And so here I'm experimenting with some lighting, and I'm following along with a lecture from Udemy. And they're telling me to make a cube, to make some shade that covers almost everything, and send a shaft of light in through the top. And those are some pretty simple steps, but the end result looks really neat. Once you've gotten some lighting and reflections, here's a scene where I'm trying to make some metallic reflections. And I'm learning all this as I'm going along through the course. And I'm using these to add to my games. So I took one of their lighting tutorials, and I said, okay, let's make it my own. Let me add some stuff. I'm going to make it blue. I'm going to add some shiny objects that float around. I'm going to add some different colored panels. And then once I had that kind of figured out, this is a game I've been working on. I put in some of my own graphics, and I saw, okay, what does this look like with my own graphics? And here's some more lighting where you can, let's see, here I'm learning about the intensity of the Skybox. And the Skybox is your world that lights up everything, and you can make it like the sun, or you can make it a spotlight that only shines on certain things. So here's another section from the physics. Make the cannon a trigger. And triggers are things that will set off another piece of code. In this one, you're building a cannon, and you're firing a projectile at a wall. And if it hits the wall, the trigger ups your score. And so that's a really simple effect. That's something you want in your games, is some interaction. You want something to happen. And so a trigger will work with that. You also want to make some on-screen controls for your game. You want a menu, you want a high scoreboard, you want some instructions. You want the button that just says play. And so they cover that kind of thing. And here's what I like to do when I'm working on a game tutorial is I really quickly decide I'm going to make this my own, and I make my own graphics. And here you can see I've just made some squiggles. I made a laser with different colored squiggles, and I made some ships that are just one ship that I copied and pasted into different colors. And what I personally get out of that is the game becomes mine. It's a tutorial, and I'm following every single step along the way, but it's mine now. I've made it my own. Here's some more about lighting, and this is some fancy lighting effects. Here's where we're making a game that's using some tiles. And so in this lecture, we're building a tile generator. So you want to build some ladders and some platforms and some walls, and it's a running, jumping, climbing game. And so we learned how to do this. And so you can see we're really covering a lot of ground in these tutorials. And this is the Udemy tutorial again. Here's the particle effects. These are really cool. I'm going to pause here for a minute and just tell you what this can do. So you can see this is a big cone and sparkly things are coming out the top. And down in the very center is the origin of the particle effect. So when you start a particle effect, it just starts sending out particles. But you can change everything about it. You can change the particles to be any color, any size, any shape. You can change the size of that cone. If you narrow it way down, you can make a laser beam. If you widen it out, you can make a big explosion. If you stick this guy on top of a volcano and make all the particles red and orange and yellow, you can have a volcano. So that's pretty neat. And it's as easy as saying insert particle effect, and then you learn all the different ways to tweak it and customize it. So here's another example of why I use screenshots. And this is to participate in the forums for the course. And here I've taken a screenshot. There's something I don't understand. And that's me. I've posted a comment and I said, when you erase a tile in the tile generator, sometimes a collider gets left behind and it can't be removed. Help me, help me. And I put a screenshot so that someone who comes along and wants to help me in the forums can see exactly where my problem is. And I've put an arrow pointing to the part I don't understand. And then another arrow that's controlling that. I'm saying, I think that's my problem. What do you guys think? And so here's much more progress on a game I've been making. And you can see I've added a ton of artwork. And I'm a digital artist, so don't worry if your artwork doesn't look like real artwork. It doesn't matter when you're a beginner. I've been doing Photoshop for years, and I'm really comfortable with lots of artwork, but sometimes you're more comfortable with animation or the coding. So here's another view. Go ahead. Okay, sure, I'm ready.
All right. Well, Clay, thank you again for speaking at CSGC 2021. We have a few quick questions here.
Sure.
And one person, I think, talking about your game jam days, you were talking about Collaborate, and somebody asked, it doesn't Collaborate have a limited number of team members that can be a part of that?
I remember during the game jam, we had a small team that was a nonprofit, small organization. And I think we were allowed to have 5 people. And yeah, it was a limited license. So not everyone on the team could use it. So mainly the programmers used it. And if you pay a little more for the size of your team, you can get more people to participate.
We've got another question here. Did you do all this from the paid courseware for the Unity certification, all this work that you've been sharing?
Yeah, well, I did 2 versions. There's the official courseware is called Gmetrics, and that's Unity's sponsored courseware. And then in parallel with that, I did Udemy. So Udemy is a tutorial website. They have all kinds of tutorials, but they had a specific course in preparation. Both of those courses mirrored each other. They mirrored that PDF we saw with the objectives. So I used both because that's just the way my mind works. I need lots of references, but either one of those you could use because they both cover all of the test requirements.
All right. Thank you again for being with us today. We really enjoyed your talk.
Thank you.